Hello, and welcome to this third episode of the Endurance Minded Podcast for 2025. Super excited to be here today. This is going to be a solo episode. We have amazing guests lined up, some of which we have already launched in the new year, many of which are forthcoming, and I couldn't be more excited. Some absolute legends in their field. But in the meantime, we are going to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. So for those of you that are longtime listeners or returning listeners to the Endurance Minded Podcast, you know that I talk about all things high performance. I am massively committed to helping others reach their full potential, be it in life, in business, in athletics. And it is something that I have largely built my life around, both my personal life as well as my career. So all that to say, what started all this is the fact that I'm an athlete. And ultimately, one of the biggest parts of my identity is my athleticism. And so today we're going to kind of come back to our roots, and we're going to talk about training. We're going to talk about how your mindset is your biggest factor when it comes to performance. And we're going to talk about this specifically through the lens of athleticism. But as you well know, again, if you are a returning listener to this podcast, that you can apply anything that I talk about today to other areas of our life. Ultimately, our mind is the biggest driving factor in our lives. It is the thing that gets in our way. It is the thing that creates our limited thought patterns. It is the thing that gets us into unproductive or habits that don't serve us. And so if we can recognize that our mindset is the biggest factor in our performance, we can get a lot out of the way and really start to unlock what our true potential looks like. And I came across a statistic that 90% of athletes, specifically endurance athletes, focus on just the training plan. And only 10% of those athletes actively work on their mindset. And it got me thinking that, conceivably, based on that statistic, the biggest area for improvement and where the next breakthrough lies for all of us isn't in our workouts, isn't in our ability to show up and how hard we go, but it is in how we think. And I want to share a quick story just to frame this, a personal story about my own endeavors. So a few years ago, and I was training for ultra distance running. I was training for ultra marathons, and I come off of a very successful season of running ultra distance races, and I was ready to go into the next one. I wanted to parlay that performance, that fitness into another season. And so finished out that season in September or October. Didn't really take much downtime and was really ready to get it going when the top of the year came around. Signed up for some more events and got the season lined out and dove right into training. And what I quickly realized is that I hadn't given myself enough time to recover. I was plagued with injury, and I was still trying to push through. And where I found myself was a real kind of push and pull, or a real just situation that I think so many of us find ourselves in. And again, this isn't all areas of our lives, but certainly in sport, is that I was at a crossroads. What I really knew, if I was honest with myself, is I knew that I needed to pull back. I knew that I needed to focus on recovery. I needed to focus on mobility. I needed to get my running mechanics right. I needed to go to the PT more. I needed to do more massage. The list goes on. But that wasn't particularly sexy. And so in the other direction, the other option in my mind was I needed to train more. If I could just push through, if I could just get stronger, if I could build resiliency, then it'd all go away. And as you might be able to see it coming, I chose the quote unquote sexier option. I ran more, I trained more, I doubled down. I thought that the solution was just to do more. And That ultimately led to a catastrophic failure that set me back really a couple of years. And I want to tell you that story because it highlights the real opportunity that we all have. We have the opportunity to recognize that our mindset plays the largest role in our performance. And then if we give as much time to our mindset as we do our physical preparation, we will actually achieve our goals much faster and have much more fulfillment and be able to stay in the game, so to speak, for much longer. And so my promise to you is that by the end of this episode, you'll have practical mindset strategies to break through all these barriers that are in your way. Break through all of these things that you feel like are stopping you. Again, these limited beliefs, these negative thought patterns, and actually train with more confidence, consistency, and resilience so that you can accomplish your goals. But again, we're not going to do that through the quote unquote more traditional lane. We're going to look at it from the perspective of our mindset. And so let's dive in and talk about why your mindset determines your performance. And let me just give an overarching caveat here. If you've made it to this point in the episode, I'm not just talking about ultra distance athletes. I'm talking about anybody. So if you're someone who is trying to stick with your New Year's resolution, someone who's trying to get out and walk more consistently, if you're someone who is just trying to feel better in your body so that you can share in particular experiences with family and friends, be outside, be more active, or you're training for some super long, hard event, all of this applies. So I might use some terminology that is catch-all. I might say endurance athlete. I might say athlete, and you might not see yourself or recognize yourself in that language. I want you to know that if that is you, I'm speaking to you. This applies. And if you're on the other end of the spectrum and you have a very strong athletic identity, then this absolutely applies. So across the spectrum, no matter where you're at, I am talking to you. So let's talk about why your mindset determines your performance. And we're going to get real nerdy here. We're going to get into some details and some statistics to support what I'm talking about, because I want you to understand that this is not just fluff. This is not just a nice to have. This is not just wouldn't it be nice if I could do that? This is science. And we put a tremendous amount of science and a tremendous amount of data on the performance related elements of our athletic pursuits. And I want you to hear that the same thing exists for the mental and mindset components as well. So a study in the Journal of Applied Sports Psychology found that athletes who engage in mental training techniques improve performance by 13 to 20% compared to those who only train physically. Now, I want you to think about that. That might not sound, or maybe it does sound, like a big number. But when I first read that, I was like, I don't know, 13 to 20%? Maybe that's nominal. False. The more that I thought about it, the more that I recognized that is massive. Let's think about this from a power perspective. If you could go 13 to 20% faster on your run, if we're talking about the bike, if you could put in 13 to 20% more power, if you saw a 20% increase in your FTP, even if you saw a 10% increase in your FTP, it would take a tremendous amount of training. And so my point is that it is outsized gains for the input required to work on your mental performance versus the effort and energy required to move the needle in the same direction to the same quantity as it would be your physical input. Right? It would take you, let me boil that down or make that very simple. It would take you a hell of a lot more effort, time, and energy to see a 13 to 20% gain in performance if you just trained harder. And in fact, it probably wouldn't happen because en route to that, you would burn out, get overtrained, or injured. So your mental performance is actually one of the biggest things that you can set your sights on because it's actually going to yield performance. The reason that this works is the brain-body connection. Right? You might have heard of the central governor theory. Essentially, this is the theory that states that our brain controls everything. It is the governor of our bodies, what we think we do, what we think we feel, what we think we act on. And so the brain-body connection is very, very real. Your brain controls how much effort you believe you can exert. If your mind isn't trained, You're going to give up before your body actually needs to. How many times have you been here? Right? You've decided ahead of time that you're not ready. You don't have it in you. You're not motivated. I'm going to use quotes on that. Motivated. It's not the day. It's not the, right? And whether or not that is or isn't the case, my point being is that we set the tone for our the physical performance that we can realize long before we show up to the actual opportunity to exert ourselves physically. So long before we make it to the gym, long before you get on the treadmill, long before you put on your cycling kit, you have already decided how that workout is going to go. Or you have certainly dramatically informed the outcome of that workout and how your body is going to process that training load before you ever make it to the actual workout. Mental fatigue impairs endurance performance by upwards of 15%. So this is based on research from Sports Medicine Journal. Again, I told you we're going to get into the weeds here. I'm going to give you some very real statistics that support what I'm saying. 15%. So mental fatigue. So if you're not fresh, if you're not working on your mental performance, if you're not working on your mindset, on your self-talk, on your visualization, on getting rid of those limiting beliefs and those negative thought patterns, you are already have reduced your input by 15%. So showing up with a mind that is prepared will make sure that your body is prepared as well. So I really want you to think about that, right? What can you do? What kind of thought patterns do you show up to your workouts with? This is going to be hard. I'm tired. I'm going to give you a few common limiting beliefs that hold us back. And I want you to see if you hear yourself in any of these. And the list could go on and on. I'm going to give you 3. I'm not fast enough. So this leads to imposter syndrome, poor performance, because we think that speed is what dictates our athletic identity. We think that whether or not we are fast is what makes us the sum total of the effort worth it. I stated that at the beginning of this, that I'm talking to everyone. I don't care how fast you're going. 1, it doesn't matter. 2, the sum total of the effort is always worthwhile. I don't care if you're walking or you're the fastest man on the planet. Speed doesn't have anything to do with it. Another one, common limiting belief that's holding us back. I have to train more to get better. Very simply, this leads to overtraining and burnout. Right? I gave you my personal story at the top of this episode. That's what happened to me. I knew that I should listen to my mind. I knew that I should prepare my mind to recognize the value in engaging in the process, to pull back, to give myself space. I want you to recognize that before I took any physical action in that direction, that was a mental struggle, right? I didn't believe it internally. And so it held me back, right? So I have to train more to get better. So often that is not the case. Now, of course, you have to put in the requisite hours required. If you have big goals, you're going to have to train at some baseline levels, but also that is the runway required to do that is often less than we think, and we put way too much pressure on ourselves. And we start too early. We train with too much intensity. And again, that's in our heads, right? That's because we think we're not good enough. And the only way to get better is to train more. The last one is I'm just not motivated today. If you've listened to this podcast before, I've talked about motivation a lot. It's a popular topic out there in the world now. The fact of the matter is that relies too much on fleeting emotions rather than discipline. Motivation is an emotion. You do not need it to get going. It doesn't matter if it's there. It has no bearing on your ability to show up. Now, again, I recognize that that's how it feels. I want you to understand that's the mental piece, right? I know that it is hard if you are not feeling motivated to get yourself to the gym or to get on your bike trainer or to go outside for a run. But again, that's in your head. That's why mental performance, working on our mindset, is so important, because it truly does not matter. Motivation has no bearing on our ability to show up and our performance, but we have to get out of our own way first. So I want you to think about, or give yourself a bit of a mantra, that your body follows where your mind leads. Right? If you tell yourself and you truly believe that motivation is not required for you to accomplish your goals and for you to get your workout in a day, your body will show up. The only thing holding you back in that scenario is your mind. I've had a long work day. I'm tired. I don't have access to the right equipment. I have, my ankle hurts. All of these are impacting our mindset. And all of them ultimately are making us think that we are not motivated, and so we're not going to get the workout in. And ultimately, again, this is reliant on a fleeting emotion. You can be motivated, or you can not be motivated. It comes and goes. Don't let that impact your success. If your mindset is weak, your training won't reach its full potential. Fact. Right? If you walk away with nothing else from this podcast, know that if your mindset is weak, your training will not reach its full potential. If you rely too much on emotion, if you think that speed is the only thing that matters and you let imposter syndrome get in the way, if you think that overtraining and training more and more input is the only thing that's going to yield success, you will not reach your full potential. And again, the list goes on. That's just 3 common examples that I know that so many of you listening to this have heard or told yourself. And it's time to get rid of that. It's time to recognize that mindset is really what moves the needle. Right? Again, your body follows where your mind leads. All right, let's talk about 3 key mindset shifts that are going to yield success. As always, I want to give you very, very actionable guidelines here. Because you're going to say, well, it's really hard. How do I change my mind? How do I shift my mindset? How do I get rid of these limiting beliefs, these things that are holding me back? I hear you. It's a daily practice, for one, right? The human condition is that we are saddled with limited beliefs, right? We are the mammals that bear that burden. Nobody else is walking around. No other animal is walking around wondering whether or not they're good enough. They're not wondering whether or not they do or don't have the skills and tools to accomplish their goals. That's a uniquely us thing. And so it's something that never goes away. And I think that's a common misconception, is if you work on this stuff enough, you won't have to battle with it. No. You develop the tools and the skills to overcome it every single day. It doesn't bog you down. It doesn't derail you from your goals. It doesn't go anywhere. You're just equipped to manage it. All right. First thing, number 1 for a key mindset shift. We're going to think about having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset in training. So what do I mean by that? So a fixed mindset is going to sound like I'm either naturally talented or I'm not. Right? I hear this one a lot. Now, certainly genetics plays a big role in our general trajectory as athletes. No doubt there are wildly gifted athletes who are genetically gifted. Those athletes have gone on mostly to be professionals, right? We see them in the news. We see them on TV. We see them, right? They rise to the top. The rest of us, it doesn't really serve us, right? So that fixed mindset of, I'm either naturally gifted or I'm not, what does that do for us? A growth mindset in that same scenario is that every training session is an opportunity to get better. I'm going to play the long game. If I show up, I focus on consistency. I don't let motivation run my habits. I don't let it drag me down. Then I know that every training session is an opportunity to get better, and the sum total of the effort will yield results. It is impossible to stay consistent for really long periods of time and not get better at something. You will improve. I don't care what it is. So, fixed versus growth mindset. Kind of a practical tip that you can use to deploy that is I want you to start tracking progress-based wins instead of just outcomes. Again, if you've listened to this podcast at all, you know I talk about progress or process-based wins a lot. Outcome-based wins are fleeting. I crossed the finish line. I did the thing. I went on a particular distance ride or run. I reached a weight. Those are outcome-based goals. Those are finite. You reach them and then there's something on the other side of them. For tracking process-based wins, we're going to say, a win for me is I pushed through the last mile even when I wanted to stop. I did my workout even when I was tired. I showed up at the gym and I had a million things going on and I had every excuse to leave. And I worked a massive work day, but I showed up and I gave it my best. Right? And document that. Right? What that's going to help you do is it's going to reinforce, one, the discipline required to do things when you don't want to do them. Again, motivation versus discipline. But it's also going to build those neural pathways to help you recognize those wins along the way. The more wins you get, the more wins you recognize, the more it reaffirms our behavior. Second tip, second key mindset shift is I want you to reframe hard training days. So if we think about these elite individuals that we all like to look up to, these gifted individuals genetically that we all wish we could be like, they don't avoid hard days. They reframe them as opportunities. So an example of that is instead of saying, this workout was terrible, I felt like shit, you say, this workout tested me. I'm stronger for it. I know some things about myself. I learned. That's another good data point. I got a lot of workouts on the other side of this. If I'm lucky enough, I can show up tomorrow and try again. Next week, next month, next year. So we don't think about the hard days as losses. If they're hard, good. Part of reaching our full potential, part of pushing through and recognizing what we're capable of is doing hard things. If you want to accomplish something different, you have to do and be someone different. You have to do different things and be a different person. You do not get different results by doing the same thing. And so we better lean into some hard stuff, because that's, by definition, is not the stuff you're doing right now. There's going to be a lot of hard stuff in front of you. Great. Let's reframe them as opportunities. What did I learn? I'm stronger for it. Maybe not my best day, but it's a good data point. Okay? Way to apply that. After every tough workout, you can write down one lesson that you learned. This rewires your perspective. Again, we're building those pathways. We're giving your brain something to sink its teeth into. What you look for, you'll find. It's one of my favorite mantras ever, and is so true. What you look for, you'll find. If you look for shitty performance, you'll keep finding shitty performance. If you look for flaws, you'll find them. If you look for opportunities to opt out, you'll find them. If you look for wins, if you look for breakthroughs, if you look for opportunities, you know what you're going to do? You're going to find more of them. So that's what I want you to focus on. Just put this in your training logs. After every tough workout, after every day you felt like crap, it didn't feel like you wanted to show up, maybe you didn't get through the workout, whatever, what's the win? What's the one lesson you learned? Start to rewire that perspective. The third one, mental toughness and controlling that inner dialogue. So studies show that 18%, let me back up. Studies show that self-talk can improve endurance performance by 18%. This is from the European Journal of Sports Science. That's crazy. 18%. Again, think about how much effort you would have to put in to see an 18% performance improvement. This is unbelievable, right? Again, rewiring how we think about ourselves in relation to performance. Okay, so what does self-talk sound like? I'm going to give you a few. relax and flow. All right, insert whatever adjective you want. Maybe that doesn't resonate with you. The sentiment is settle in, find your rhythm, give yourself the opportunity to show up. Instead of condemning yourself at the start before you've even given yourself an opportunity to excel, relax, let it flow. I can't tell you how many, literally thousands of workouts in my life I thought were going to be horrible, and I just showed up, and lo and behold, my body responded, and it went great. Give yourself an opportunity. Relax. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. Really simple one. 1 more mile. All right, go 1 more mile. See how it feels. Maybe you'll settle in. Maybe you'll find your groove. Maybe it'll still feel like crap. But again, what can you learn? What did you take away from that? What's the one lesson? Another one that I love. I've done harder things. Super, super valid. Especially if you're someone who has had some life experiences. I know for me, each passing year, inevitably, lots of challenges, right? Many of them self-elected. I've done harder things. Right, I'll get through this. So positive self-talk can improve performance by 18%. So try it out. Find your mantra. Something you can just lean on. What's your go-to mantra for tough moments when you're training or racing? All right. Next phase. How do you train your mind like you train your body? All right. So we talked about why this is important, right? Why does your mindset determine your performance? I gave you 3 key mindset shifts. So now that we've recognized that it's important, I've given you some tools to shift your mindset. We want to talk about how do you actually train this thing like you train your body? How do we give it the same thought, the same energy, the same weight when we think about our time commitment? First one is visualization techniques. Research from the sports psychologist found that visualization activates the same neural pathways as physical training, which can improve endurance performance by 11%. So just visualizing you getting a win, visualizing doing it well, your brain actually, to a large extent, doesn't recognize the difference. And so it activates the same neural pathways, the same things that elicit physical performance can be elicited by visualization. Right? Again, what you look for, you'll find. Literally, you can look for it. How do you do this? Before your workouts, close your eyes and just visualize yourself finishing strong. Take a second. Right? The prep for our sessions is so important. Literally, just take a beat. Don't just swing your leg over the bike and get to it. Take a second. Before your workouts, close your eyes, visualize yourself finishing strong. What does that look like? How are you going to respond during those hard intervals, during the hard effort? How's your breathing going to go? What's your mindset going to be? Also, you can mentally rehearse key moments, like I'm saying. If it's a workout you've done before, what's it going to feel like? How are you going to respond? What's the feedback that you're going to let yourself respond to? Heart rate gets a little high, that's okay. Settle in, relax, flow, right? Go back to your mantras. All right, now we're going to manage those pre-race or pre-training nerves. I want you to think about excitement over anxiety. I've always said, when people tell me, oh, I'm really nervous, good. You should be nervous. If you're doing something hard and you're stretching yourself, that discomfort lets you know you're in the right place. Right? If you're not nervous, you're probably selling yourself short. So your body reacts the same way to excitement as it does anxiety. It's just in how you interpret it, right? We give a name to anxiety versus excitement. It's the same thing. A Harvard study found that athletes who reframe nerves as excitement perform significantly better than those who try to quote unquote calm down. So it's a reframe, right? We're giving another name, we're giving another identity to that anxiety. We're going to call it excitement. We're going to recognize that it's the same thing, So instead of trying to calm our anxiety, we're going to reframe it into excitement. We're going to do this long before we get to the event or the hard training session. And one way to do this is, instead of saying I'm nervous, say I'm excited to test my training today. Because that's really what it is, right? If you're someone who's showing up consistently and you want to get better and you want to improve, any hard thing that you do is just an opportunity to test what you've been working on, right? It's just an environment to put what you've been showing up for consistently to the test to see how it goes. And then how to apply this, the third one, I want you to think about the 1% rule. So small mental wins every day. You didn't improve your fitness overnight, right? If you are somewhere from a fitness perspective, from a physical preparation perspective that you have not been before, it did not take you a week or a month. It took you a long time. Many, many months, many years. These things are small, small building blocks that stack on top of each other season after season. The mental preparation, your mental game is the same. So if you improve your mindset by just 1% every day, that compounds into huge shifts over time, right? So I'm not saying this is a wholesale change. You're going to feel better tomorrow if you implement all these things that I'm talking about, but I am saying that you can start to stack the bricks. Start journaling 1 win per day again after the workout. Write down, what did you learn? What's the lesson you learned? What's one takeaway? Write your 1 win per day. Start to flex that mental muscle. Spend 2 minutes visualizing success before workouts. Again, light lifts. I'm not saying that this is some wholesale change. These are light things, small touch points that start to reframe how we think about ourselves and our performance. Spend 2 minutes visualizing that success. How do you finish strong? What's it going to feel like in those intervals? How are you going to respond when things get hard? You can also shift negative self-talk to neutral or positive reframing. Again, anxiety to excitement. I'm not good enough. I haven't trained enough. I'm not fast enough. What's it sound like to shift that? I'm exactly where I need to be. I've done everything that I can do. I've been as consistent as I possibly can. I trust myself. I've done harder things. Again, shift that negative self-talk to that neutral or a positive reframing. The neutral piece is that it also doesn't have to mean anything. We don't have to have particularly strong feelings every single time. Sometimes you can just show up and do it. That's okay too. All right, so let's wrap it up. Key takeaways. Again, I want this to matter. This, from a personal perspective, this is the biggest thing that I have ever worked on in my entire life. Of all the things that I've accomplished physically, of all my accomplishments in any realm of my life, understanding that my mind is what moves me has been the single biggest performance upgrade and advantage that I have developed. And I continue to develop it. Again, these things don't go away. We just have to flex the muscles. So key takeaways. Your mind limits you before your body does. You got to train your mind like you train your body. If your mind's not there, your body's going to follow. You were doomed before you ever got on the bike, out for the run, in the pool. Self-talk, visualization, and reframing tough moments can increase performance by up to 20%. Right? So let me say that again. Everything that we've talked about self-talk, visualization, reframing those tough moments, it actually has benefits. This is not fluff. This is not a nice to have. This is not a when I get around to it. 20% performance improvements. You're not going to get that by training any harder. I promise. Take it from someone who knows. Third, key takeaway. Every breakthrough starts in your mind. Small mindset shifts compound into major performance gains. Again, pick one. Pick one you can do for the next week or the next month, or start with the next week, then build to the month. Again, write what's your small win? Journal 1 win per day. Spend some time visualizing. Shift that negative self-talk. Come up with a mantra. Right, pick one. These breakthroughs happen. Things compound. Small mindset shifts compound into major performance gains. And so I want you to take one mindset strategy from today and I want you to apply it to your next workout. I want you to try one new mantra, one visualization technique, one way to reframe how you show up. So, I know that you've struggled with this. We all have. This is the human condition. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know how, yes, you have. None of us think that we're prepared. None of us think that we have everything we need. None of us think that we are as good as we want to be or would like to be. So I'm talking specifically through the lens of performance today and our athletic identity. But again, this applies to all areas of our lives. You can replace this language with anything, whether it's how you show up for your family or your job. It starts in your mind. Your body, your actions follow your mind. And so again, I want you to try something, right? The takeaway, if you get nothing else out of the day, I want you to try one new mantra, one visualization technique, work to reframe these negative thought patterns to show up in a more meaningful way so that you can increase your performance. You can increase the yield in the outcome that you get. And lastly, I want you to share this episode. This applies to everyone. There's no one on the face of this earth that doesn't have these negative beliefs. So who can you share it with? A training partner, a friend, a coworker, a family member? I want people to hear that it is possible to get more out of yourself without giving more. That's the key piece here. Is I'm not asking you for a bigger lift. I'm not asking you for more of your time. I'm not telling you that to get more, you have to do a ton more. I'm asking you for 2 to 3 minutes a day to see massively improved benefits on the other side of that. And you're going to feel better. It does not feel good to be bogged down by our mental state. I'm tired. I don't have enough. I'm never going to do it. I got too much going on at work. All right, all the stuff. You can unpack that. You can rewire how we move through our days. Doesn't mean that we're not going to have stressful days. We're not going to have tough periods. But again, it's a muscle to be worked, and you can start to override these things. Lastly, if you haven't yet, please rate and subscribe. Rate this podcast on your favorite platform. Let us know what you think. It means the world to me. It is the lifeblood of podcasts, and I'm grateful and appreciative to everyone who has taken the time to do that already. If you haven't, take a second, whatever platform you're listening on right now, please rate this podcast and subscribe. New episodes every other Tuesday. And again, if you're not subscribed yet, we have some heavy hitters lined up for this year, not to be missed in terms of guests, content, episodes. We are coming in hot this year, and it's going to be great. So if you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button so you can be alerted. Really, really great content that I'm super proud of coming in the very near future. So thanks as always for your support. I appreciate you. Hope you found this helpful. If you need anything, you can reach out to us directly at enduranceMinded.com. And until then, I'll see you next time on Endurance Minded.